Hey everybody. So this is going to be a additional little demo on specific projects. So on this one, I'm going to be covering the the Baños Públicos project. So this is kind of an unscripted thing. I'm just going to go through from just brought in the drawings to how I would get to starting the process and try to cover in a little bit more detail each of the sort of things that I would be looking for. So these drawings are just simply dragged in at this point. They have not been scaled, so the first thing, of course, I'm going to do is find the scale on the drawing and use that as a reference. So I know that's 5 meters, so 5M. We'll scale that one appropriately. These don't have a overall scale on them, so I'll have to use these dimension strings. And fortunately, this guy actually gives, this sort of blow-up drawing actually gives a clearer dimension string here, so we can see that that height is 3.13, and that same string is actually on here. It's just too blurry to see, but that's what that one says, so I'll use that as a reference. I'm using this bigger drawing because it has more information, and I'll just use the other one as a reference. 3.13 meters. So now those should be scaled, and of course I can do the same thing here, just so I have everything scaled appropriately. 3.13 meters. Okay, so next thing, I'm going to go into perspective view. Actually, just going to go ahead and hide everything else because I have everything in this model and don't need it. So I'm always typing in ZS and clicking enter when everything's selected so I can get to those things. And I'm just going to use the gumball here to rotate and get these things to be approximately where they need to go. Let's make the perspective full screen. So in this case, it looks like they were both scaled pretty well because you can see they line up nicely. Yeah, that worked pretty well. Usually I'm not quite that accurate, so I'm happy with that. And you can see here, since there is an angle on that ground plane, that actually helps give us an indication of where this would be actually cut, which looks to be about right there. Because you can see that the length of that projecting balcony space is cut right where that is. So this line should line up the way they have, the way I have them there. So first thing, I'm actually not going to worry about the ground for the moment. I'm actually just going to worry about drafting this guy. From a top view. So I'm going to go to a top view and I'm going to turn on polyline and make sure my project is on, this little button down here. This is going to be very important. Oops, web capture was not on, but now it is. Sorry about that if you missed anything. So in this case, I'm just going to go through and draft my walls. And I'm just going to do the sort of post-shade black walls right now. Actually, before I do that, to make this easier, it would be convenient to have another grid. So since we have, it's easy to draft on this grid that's on the north-south axes because we automatically snap to that with ortho snap-on. This grid over here, we're not going to automatically snap to, and it's be much more convenient if we could. So I'll show you how to get that set up. So the way to do this is we're going to go up to the upper left-hand corner here, going to right-click, and then we're going to go down to C-plane, named views. And what this is going to do is bring up the current C-planes we have in the model, and these are the ones you should have by default. And we're going to create a new one. So actually, again, go back up here. And this panel is just really useful to keep open. And go to C-plane, and we'll do 3-point. So basically what's going to do is ask us for so the angle of our proposed C-plane. So sometimes this is easier to do. Actually, I think that's probably the wrong one to do. All right, so I was actually correct. The way to do this is we're actually just going to type in the command C-plane, and then I'm going to click the 3-point, and I'm going to work actually in the perspective view for this because I find it easiest to see the different planes. I'm going to click, actually I might go back and forth. I'm going to click on a line that I can sort of follow that I know is on the axes I want. So I want this sort of rotated axes. And again, you don't actually have to do this, but it will make your life easier. So click twice, and essentially, now if we draft, we'll draft completely perpendicular to that. So I have this little panel up from before, which again was the C-plane named C-planes panel. And I'm just going to hit save and name this rotated plane. And now, if we click on it, it should go to that rotated plane. So actually, I didn't quite finish the command. So let me try that one more time. So I'm just do C-plane, and I will do 3-point. Again, switching between views to make it find the one that is most convenient for me. I will do this corner, draw out one of the axes, hit enter. Okay, so now our C-plane should be here. We can't see it because this guy's here, but maybe if we turn that off, oh, these are not on the correct layer, so I'm going to select these two and put them on my drawing import layer. Now if we turn it off, you can see there's my C-plane. Okay, so now we want to save this, and I'll save over that guy. So if we turn the plane off, we could see my C-plane is currently here. If I do the original world plane, it should disappear and go back to where it originally was. Now, generally, you want your world plane, you want to model near your original world plane top. It's just good practice, but you don't actually have to. And as long as you're not too far away, Revit or Rhino starts to get real weird if you go like miles away from the original C-plane. It just starts making some errors happen. So I'm going to keep this guy around because when I draft, I want to be able to draft into different planes. So as I go back to Polyline now and start drafting, I'm going to make sure my ortho snap is on. And as long as I'm on the correct plane, which I now just double click this guy, you can see that it's automatically snapping to that. And that's going to make drafting here a lot easier. Now I'm not going to worry too much about the exact widths of these walls. If I were, modeling this for, a professional office or something, I might be a little bit more concerned. But in this case, for this model, it's not going to be too important. Now, what I am going to try to do is keep things consistent. So this wall here, I'm actually going to try to make sure that I model the same width. So I'm actually just copying this across. Now, I probably should have modeled that all as one wall and not cut out the doors. But at this point, it's not going to make that big a difference. And I just did it. So I'll come back and I'll do the other one the other way, not cutting out the doors as I've shown here. So again, just kind of following the lines. And since these are drafted separately, you can see that they have different pochets to them. They're different layers of construction, so I'm just going to model them separately. So down here we have our snaps. This is the, if you turn on O snaps, that's where you get these things. Sometimes it's good to sort of mess around and see which one of these work for you. Center can be really useful when you're working with circles, but it also finds the center of everything. So I usually end up turning that off because I just end up finding it annoying. So now we're at a point where we're actually switching grids. So I'm going to double click on my top grid and continue. So now I can be drafting along this grid. So there is going to be a bit of back and forth as I go between the two grids, but that's okay. And again, so it does want me to finish what I was drafting the first time, but that's okay. So we'll come back, and you can see here, if I pull this straight, I would actually end up missing. And if I do this, I will be off axes. I'd rather keep things perpendicular, so I'm actually just going to pull it straight and move this curve down to match, because I want those to be perpendicular. I care about that more than those exact alignments. And then I'll just use the trim command. Actually, no, I will do the fillet command. So fillet with a radius of 0, which you can set the radius by clicking this and putting 0, will actually just connect two lines that are where they would end up connecting. So it extends them or trims them back, which can be really useful. So now I'm actually going to finish out this curve, even though it was on top of that other curve, because I want this to be a full shape in and of itself, a closed polyline. So now I'm just going to select, make sure I can't select my background layer, so make that locked. But I am going to select all these lines that I just drew and they're disconnected lines right now, but because their endpoints are the same, I should be able to just type in join, and now they are joined to one closed curve. And I'm going to do the same thing for all the others. So that's already joined. That's already joined. I know I need to do let's see here. So I need to do this. This is a low wall, which fortunately the section will tell me about exactly what that height is. And I'm not going to draft my curtain wall and door that I have right now, but I'll come back to that. I am going to get this sort of what would be called like a fur out wall. You can see it's a separate wall adjacent to the that first wall. And I currently have the smart track on, which allows me to make those sort of adjacency snaps, which is very convenient. And just switching back and forth between grids. I'm not trying to be hyper precise, but I can be close enough. I'm not going to do those walls as part of this because those are little partition walls. And again, just using the smart track to connect things where possible. And I do want, so I'm going to have to follow the same curve, which is fine, because I want to make sure that I can make this into a closed polyline. So now I should have these two curves that I can join. And let's see, I'll do this guy now. So it's a lot of repetitive process with this sort of stuff, especially in this sort of early first stage. Now, as I said, I'm going to do this one differently, so I'm actually not going to cut out the doors. I'm just going to cut out, do the full extrusion of the walls, which is generally probably a better idea to sort of keep cleaner modeling. It's something I forgot to do the first time, but I'll do it this time. So again, just keeping my alignments. Going through, now you can see here that I didn't do this one correctly, because if I pull this across, those don't align. So I will Control Z and make sure that I use that as a reference and pull that all the way across. And snap these to, oh, it doesn't finish that way. Gotta go the other direction. All right. So I think I've done most of the walls at this point. Now again, they're just 2D drafted, but that's kind of all I need to do initially. So if I'm smart, I would start making some layers here. So interior walls, and let's do a exterior. And that's just going to help keep me organized as much as possible. So these little fur out walls that I called here, I'm going to put those on my interior layer. And I'll make that some color that I can recognize, a nice blue. And then all the walls that are sort of these exterior walls, I'll put on a separate layer. And you can find your own organization. It doesn't have to be exactly this, but keeping organized is, of course, always a good idea. And we'll make that a nice color too. Oops. We don't have two things selected at once. Okay, so I think I have enough drafted for now. I will hold off on doing the landscape for the moment, and I'll come back to that. And the landscape is really just those sort of platforms. So using the section, we can actually get all the heights of these things. So we know that, let's go to a side view. We can basically just sort of select the things we want to extrude. So I'm going to actually select these sort of interior walls here, as you can see, and do extrude curve. And I want to make sure that solid is set to yes. That'll just make it so that they're already solids, and just align. Now, if I were being real precise, I would figure out what that those numbers are and actually make them exactly that. But it's not going to matter too terribly much, because again, we don't have to build with this, and the drawing's a little blurry. Now, I might have made them slightly tall, because if you can see here, I didn't perfectly align my section the first time, so if I want to use those for reference, I actually want the ground plane to align. You can see that corner right there. So these guys I might want to just shrink a little bit, and I'm just going to use the scale 1D command and just scale them back just a bit. There we go. So now those should be pretty precise. So this back wall, which appears to be the brick wall in the project, I'm going to do extrude curve and pull that out. So it looks like it actually goes and finishes right before the ceiling plane, but we'll do it that way. So, and now the exterior walls. So this is where we might not have enough information in these sections alone. It does appear that they go the full height, but I'm just going to reference the Arc Daily real quick. So if we see here, these walls, really become, there's a separate sort of pour here for the concrete, but these walls basically go the full height of the interior, and then there is a sort of separate pour that is functionally the same wall sitting on top of it. So I'll actually model this as two pieces just to sort of keep it simple. So basically all these little black walls here, I'm going to extrude, and I will pull them up to, I guess, the same level as that exterior wall that I already did. And I'm just going to reference it. So that is a majority of my walls, actually. So I need to build a floor, a ceiling, and I need to build that sort of upper wall. So for that upper wall, again, I can use that photograph to sort of see that it just follows the outside perimeter of the building, and it looks to be, maybe 2 feet tall. Obviously, it's in meters, but it's a pretty simple shape. So I'm just going to actually draft that out now. Again, I'm going to turn on projection, especially now that I have 3-dimensional objects, and just follow the outlines. And so I'm going to keep rotated plane on. And just rely on my snaps. So it looks like that wall didn't actually snap where I wanted it to, but that's okay. I'm going to go to world plane now. So I want to fillet these two curves with a radius of 0 so they connect. There we go. So again, I'm trying to keep everything perpendicular and parallel. So I'm going to, use my snaps whenever possible. So I'm going to now select that outside wall that I just drafted up, and it's 3 curves right now, so I'm just going to join them. So it's 1 curve. I want to make this into a solid, so instead of just drafting the other side, I'm just going to do an offset. And let's see, I'm just going to guess that was 6 inches. Maybe a little bit more. Let's do 8 inches. That seems about right. So you can see here, it's not perfectly aligning, but because this is actually going to be built on top of the other one, I'm not actually too worried about it. So I'm going to go back to perspective, and I just typed in move and then V. So you can see here, it's now locked to vertical axes. And I want to turn off project, so I can bring this guy up. So now that profile is sitting on top of my other walls, and now I can extrude it up, and I'm going to go back to the side view so I can get the height right. And there we go. So that's sort of that upper sort of cast concrete low wall that's retaining the grass and the roof. So now let's build the roof. So if you look at this section, it will tell us how the roof functions. I'm going to just move this for a second. You can see here, basically the roof is one continuous piece that then wraps up and becomes the little wall that we're working with now. So I'm just going to draft where that would be. So it's going to be on the outside perimeter. And now that I've already drafted these walls, actually I'm going to start over and make sure project is on. Again, whenever I'm drafting in 2D, I really want to have project on. Otherwise, I'm going to be making a non-planar object as it snaps to different walls at different heights. but I can just kind of move around the model and use the snaps and make this go pretty quick. Okay, so again, I want to lift this thing, turn off project. And now I can do extrude curve and give this guy some thickness as well. So again, looking seems to be about that. So now I have a roof. Now it does have some, so that's a green roof, so it has some membranes and other layers on top of it. For now though, I'm not gonna worry about those. I will come back to that. So I've really done the majority of the walls. I can actually probably just copy this down. This is actually probably the same shape as the floor. So I'm actually just going to kind of cheat a little bit and do that. It'll at least be with close enough for now. And there's of course an exterior floor versus an interior floor. So I should probably make a roof. Oops, so it's already a roof in this model. I'm just going to make a separate one, roof 2, spelled excellently. Mostly because now I can turn that off and I can continue working in here. So it looks like I missed the wall on the interior here. So of course I will come back and fix that. Again, turning on C-plane and or turning on project and going to the correct C-plane so that I can snap to the axes I want. Again, it will help tremendously to keep things perpendicular, and that will really make the drafting look detailed and appropriate. So the more you draft, the nice thing is the more you just have snaps, other walls and lines that you can just snap onto, which means you can go a little bit faster and you don't have to pay quite as close attention. So I guess I have these interior walls now, which seem to go up to the ceiling as well. So I'm just going to extrude them up. And of course, turning off project. With project on, they just wouldn't go anywhere because they want to snap to the C-plane, and the C-plane is what they were drawn on, so they can't actually get any taller. Now for these partition walls, if we look in the section, I'm going to pull this up for a second, we can see the partition walls are sort of half height. They go nearly to the ceiling, and they are lifted off the ground. So if I wanted to do these sort of nice and detailed, I would also come back in, and I'm actually only going to do this once, and then I'm just going to copy it because that will be tremendously easier. So I just made a nice little rectangle there. Oops, you can see this is why you need project, because otherwise you end up with weird snaps like that, and that will not work. So project is on. Again, not the most accurate thing in the world. We'll shift that over. I'm not really going to be too worried about that. And now we're going to go to our side view, and I'm going to lift this up to where the stall height begins. And now I will do an extrusion and bring that up to the top. And now I can just copy this guy. And I'll want to do the same thing here, and I would do that separately for this over on this side because it's on a separate axis. So instead of trying to rotate this, I could, but it's easy enough to just redraft that. I'm going to skip that for now. What is this? Oh, looks like I accidentally copied my roof and or floor, put it somewhere I didn't need to be. So I would also probably want to do the fronts of these the same way. So I'm actually just going to, again, kind of make my life easy, take the wall that's here. I'm actually just going to do a rotation command and either hit C or click in the upper left-hand corner. And now I'm just going to rotate So now it'll give me a wall that's the same height and the same thickness, just because I don't want to have to draft it twice. And I'm just going to use the scale 1D command to scale that across. Now that's not super accurate because it does need to have some cutouts for the doors. So I will just quickly figure out what the doors would be. So it looks like that's about the door. And just make that a bit bigger. And now I'm just going to copy that because I'm going to use this as a Boolean. Again, you could have done this differently. I did this more complicated way than probably needed to, but you know, the great thing about software like this is there's about 1,000 ways to do everything. So you're not necessarily wrong if you do this differently than I do. In fact, I've probably done some things pretty silly in my modeling process just now, where I could have been more efficient or just could have been done a better job at it. But that's okay. I'm going to end up with what I hope to be a pretty good product. And that's all I'm really worried about. So we're just going to do a Boolean difference and subtract out and I'm just going to take these so now they're one object. If you don't like seeing what are called the ISO curves, which are those sort of lines that divide up faces, we can just turn them off in the properties. You can also turn them off so the whole view doesn't show them. But for now, I'll just do that. Okay, so I guess I should probably model. There is a sink here. I think our detail drawing, wherever it is, gave some indication of what that sink looked like. Oh, here it is. So it looks like we're upside down here, but you can see the sink is just a straight extrusion. Now I'm lost as to where I am. Am I upside down? Sorry if I've gotten everyone car sick just now. Anyways, so I'm just going to, again, use the rectangle 3-point, which is my favorite of the rectangles. Actually, I'm going to do this the other way. I'm going to do a extrusion, a 3-point box. Because I don't really, it's such a simple shape, I don't really need to worry about drafting in 2D first. So I'm actually just going to extrude it up to the height I need, which is going to make it way taller than necessary. You can see here, but then I'm just going to do a scale 1D and bring it back up to be only the height I need. So again, I've got most of the things done at this point. I guess the next thing I'll do is, I think, is this either a stair? One of these is a stair. So this guy's a stair. I'll model him real quick. I don't know why he has a male identity, but so far I've done that, so that's all right. I'm going to go back to my world plane because it's on that axis. And I'm just going to decide that it seems the stair goes all the way to here based on these lines that we have. So I want to make sure all of my steps are the same width initially, and then I'm going to cut them back because that's going to be a lot easier. So I'm just going to use my snaps. And so I don't know if we have, do we have a section? We do have a section that gives us the heights, which is going to be convenient. So we could try to figure out what they say, or we could snap to them. I'm just going to actually draft this guy and then bring it up so that I can try to match its height to the image as best as possible. Scale 1D, of course. I have project on. Actually, you know what the better way of doing this would be? Instead of doing what I just did, I'm actually just going to trace this profile. So again, I have project on. This is a much more accurate way of doing it. However, try that one more time. So the weird thing about project is since I'm really far from, I want to make sure I'm on the correct C-plane. I am on the correct C-plane. it's going to draw on the original C-plane, which is over here somewhere. So whatever I drew is really far away from that, which is kind of inconvenient, but I'll just remember that and come back to it. This is why you want to always be modeling near the C-plane, so as you're drawing things, they don't appear really far off in the distance. But I'm actually just going to draw one stair, and I'm drawing one stair for a very particular reason, because I want all my stairs to be the same, and if I were to just manually draw each one, I probably wouldn't have them all be the same. I would probably not be successful. But then I'm going to use the array linear command, and it looks like there are 17 stairs. I already drew 2, so let's try 15. So we can see here, didn't quite get it right, but that's okay. Because essentially what we're going to do is, it looks like I need one more of these. Kind of hard to see right now, but that's okay again. Take all of them, and I'm going to join them. Now I'm going to do the scale 1D command so that I can make sure that these are really as accurate as they can be. So I know I want that face to align. So I'm just scaling it in this one direction now. There we go. And now I'm going to scale in the z-axis, again using the reference points of what I've already drawn. So this is where sometimes you have to turn off Smart Track because it wants to snap the things that you don't want it to. Anyways, so I got that now. That's just the top of my curve. I'm going to need to draw the underside real quick. So I'm just going to come back. Don't have to be as precise about this because this is actually all underground concrete. And if we're honest, concrete is really never accurately poured like this. I mean, it's poured, but concrete is a fluid material. It's really difficult to be perfect. So it's always a little different than it's originally drawn. Okay, so we should now have the components to make a closed curve. Type that. I just hit J and then hit enter, which would join the curves. So now it's one closed curve. Since it's way far off in the distance, I'm just going to pull it back over. And I'm going to go to my plan so I can align this thing. Again, I still have project on, so I can actually snap to that wall. And now I can do extrude curve. And again, I want to extrude the full length. It's a little bit bigger than I need, but that's okay. Because I'm going to now trim it back using the booleans. So it is on its own axes, but that's okay. Because it seems there's stuff over here on that axis, but I'm not actually going to worry about that stuff. I'm only going to be worried about this one line. You do not need to model anything over there. You can see here, I definitely have that guy elevated a little bit high, but just take him, Boolean difference. And now I can bring this back down to where it needs to be. So I just want to align it. Let's see here. Turn off project. Again, I'm hitting V so I can only move on the vertical axes. And there we go. There's my stair. Now it does have a wall on the side. I'm not going to worry about that right now. I'm just going to worry about that stair. So I don't know how long it's been. Actually, I can look how long it's been. In 30 minutes or so, give or take, I've got the vast majority of this project modeled. Again, I'm going to model what I did in the other demo real quick. And I guess I should show how you would cut out the doors for that, the piece that I didn't do it that way. And that's probably, I'd have to look at the photos to see if that was accurate for the stalls, because I think the way I modeled the stalls in the other one is probably more accurate. But I will at least cut out this door. I'm not going to do everything for this project. I'm just trying to get through a lot of the basics. So we'll want to, for things like this where we don't have an exact reference, we'll want to look at the photos again and see if we can figure out how high does that door go. There we go. So you can see the door is the full height of that wall. So that's good to know. So actually in this case, I don't really need to cut out a door. I'm just going to use the move face command and move this, nope, not that face. That face. And move it back. Because we could see from that photograph that that wall really ended. It didn't continue on the other side. That's where it transitions to the glass wall. So let's do that glass wall one more time, which I did in the last video. These things here, I'm guessing are, I can't really tell what that is. So I'm just going to make an approximation of that glass, which really will be fine. I'm just going to guess it's 8 inches by 3 inches. I want to make a nice little C shape. And I screwed up and I actually put an extra point on this. I'll turn that off. Again, join those profiles, then I'm just going to do a quick fillet. And this time my radius I'm going to set to 1/4 inch. So fillet can join things together or it can round corners. So a fillet with radius will round a corner. A fillet that just has set to 0 will just tie things together. So I'm now going to do an offset. And I want it to be set to have a flat cap, and I want the distance to be set to 1/4 inch. And there we go. I now have a profile. So I'm just going to copy this profile, rotate it, and snap it back. And since I know I need to have a little gap here so the next piece can fit in, this will basically be my little curtain wall that is the channel glass. So I'm just going to set this to be channel glass, bright green. I'm actually going to give it a material real quick so that it appears as transparent in some other views. Not too important right now, but just a quick thing on how to do this. So this already has a bunch of materials in it because I keep making things and importing stuff. But I'm actually just going to go and name this glass and select the glass material. And now you can use that same material again. So anything on that layer, which I'm going to set this to be on that layer, will then automatically inherit that glass material. So I'm going to select both of these, put them on the glass channel. Now I'm going to make them into a block just by typing block. It'll ask me for a base point, which I will set as one of these corners. Channel. And now I can array this thing so I can get my full wall of channel glass. Just using the snaps that are here until I get the snap the way I expect it to. So I'd want to look again at the photos to figure out where its exact alignment is, especially since the drawings are a little less than perfectly detailed. So this will tell me. So it looks like it's set back maybe, I guess, 4 inches or so. So I can use that as a reference. And this looks close enough for me right now. So I'm just going to pull it to the side. And I'm just going to array this again. I know 15 is going to be more than I need, but that's okay. Oh, actually, just barely more than I need. So, yeah, that worked out pretty well. Turning the corner, I'm actually not going to be... There are specific pieces of channel glass that are designed to turn corners, but I'm actually just going to take this guy and kind of be a little loosey-goosey about it and just turn the corner by just turning the block. Again, it's not perfect, but without actually going and figuring out what this specific company's profiles are, this would be close enough. So there we go. That's my channel glass wall. I'd want to do the same thing over here to get that guy. So for the last thing I'm going to do for this demo, I will probably... So there's a ramp on this side. I'll give you a brief idea on how to do that. And then I'm going to make the ground condition itself. Now, if we look in the section, we can see here that there is, the ground extends out over top of, and then there's some other material there. For that other material, it looks like it's the same sort of general shape and size of this guy. So I'm actually just going to copy this first thing up. And again, you can set it to copy on the vertical axes. So I'm just scaling 1D, like so. So now I would probably put that on a separate layer, but that's going to be our sort of ground material that's over top of our building. Okay, so the final things I'm going to do are going to be, I am going to make that ground condition. And again, I'm just going to reference the sort of line that we see here. It is not super hyper accurate, but that is okay. I mean, if we were doing this the sort of correct way, we'd want to be referencing topography data and then cut that out. But we don't have that. There's certainly not enough in this model to do that, or in these drawings. So I'm just going to get as close as I can and make a profile. Now I want to make sure project is on, which it wasn't. So this will possibly not work. You always want to be drawing in 2D with project on. But I think it did work because I wasn't snapping to anything. If I had snapped to something, I could ruin this. So this will make a good test before you start doing this process is type in the command planar surf. If it makes a surface, you know you've kept those lines planar and you don't have any issues. So now when I copy this guy across, so I'm going to go back to my plan view. And you can see here, I want to get back on my original world axes. That way my piece updates. So I'm just gonna, doesn't matter too much. I'll start here. I'm gonna copy this profile 3 times just so I can make references of it. So I'm actually just gonna align, again, this is not super accurate. We don't have better data, so this is fine. I want to align the last one to my rotated grid. So I'm actually just going to select that and rotate. We made a copy, and I don't need a copy. So again, this is just kind of transitioning grids. Just making an extra one. Okay, so you can see here, I now have 4 curves. I wanted at least 2 on each axis. That way there's a bit of an extension. It doesn't just turn the corner. And I will now do a loft command. And those lines should align to one another. You can see they're not right now. So if we do this, it's going to be all kinds of crazy. So we want to hit loft again and just pull these back so that that line makes a straight line across the same points on each one of these curves. Usually it's pretty good about guessing which way it should go, but it's not always perfect. So you can do any one of these, see which one looks best to you. I think I'll do loose. Again, it's not super accurate because we don't have actual topography data. And then I should be able to hit cap. And as long as those surfaces, those curves that I started with were planar, it should remain planar and be able to be capped. Okay. I'm just going to select actually everything there and unselect the surface so I can get rid of those curves just because I don't want extra curves in my model. And now I will bring this down. I'm going to use the section for that. And I will snap to, there we go. Now, of course, this currently has the surface going through my object. So I'm going to want to cut that out. Again, in top view, just going to come back and draft where I need that surface to be cut out. So let's just do, we're going to do the whole ramp because I don't know how far the ramp is underground. So again, just drafting different bits. And I'm just going to join them together. So I actually I did this first line wrong here. So I really want to be drafting on the outside of the building, because I want to make a clean cut that includes, sort of pulls back the earth on the outside, so my walls and earth aren't colliding with each other. You can see here my axes weren't perfect, but that's okay. And I'm actually just making this bigger real quick and not worrying too much, because I know it's not going to be cutting at that end. So I fill it, radius 0. Fill it again, this guy and that curve. So now I think I have all the curves I need. I join, one closed curve, excellent. So we'll go back to this view, extrude this guy up. It just needs to be taller than necessary and wants to start at the right height. So I'm cutting this out, so I'm actually going to go, let's go actually beneath the lowest part of the building. It's better to cut out a little bit more. If I were being really particular, I might cut out this part less because it's, actually I guess we'll do that. So we'll just align here. Oh, I was only moving the curve. I really wouldn't be moving this box. So I'm going to move this guy down, align to the underside of the slab. And now I can do a Boolean. And voila. Now the last thing I will need to do is I need to make that ramp. So you can see that this wall really does continue, even though it doesn't appear so in the 2D plan, but that's just because it's being cut weird. So I'm actually just going to do a move. Well, no, I'll leave it. I'll just draft that out real quick. Turn this back on. And on the rotated axes. I'll only do part of it. So using the move face command to just extend this guy, deselect what I didn't want. For this project, you don't have to build the entire ramp, just build the first part. We can't actually, I don't think there's a section that's cutting through the ramp. There's not, so we can't actually get an idea of exactly what the slope is. So what's the best way of doing that? So it does appear to start, the ramp appears to start here. So I'm just going to do an approximation. I am on my rotated plane, snap, and I'll go to this end. So I did not have project on, that's why it was up in the air like that. And I'm just going to, again, this is just, it doesn't really matter too much. That's not at all the slope of a ramp per se, but it'll be close enough. Nice little ramp there. The last thing I'd want to do is just draw the outside surface, and I suppose the railing that goes with it, which would just be following this curve. Now, these are on different axes, which does make it a little bit more challenging, but I'm not going to be super precise, as I've said several times now. And I can almost call this guy done. So those lines, looks like these curves didn't actually end up touching. Or did they? They did. One closed curve. Excellent. Ooh, so occasionally this will happen where you forgot to turn on the planer, so you end up with this. I don't really want to redraw that, so I'm just going to go to my top view and type in make 2D and just make sure that view is set on, or as long as you're in top view, it doesn't actually matter. But basically, it will just copy that line down, so we can now have a flat version. Although it copied it. I'm actually going to do that one more time. So there actually is a reason to make sure that when you're doing this, you have it set to C-plane. So if we do make 2D again, and this time set to C-plane, it'll just copy straight down as opposed to moving it to the origin. So now I can delete that, and I can make an extrusion of this. So now it will extrude because it's planar. And I'll just take it. You can see that's actually, it's a little bit lower, so I will pull it down. That is also a sloping surface. I'm not going to worry about the slope, and I don't think you need to either, because it's pretty subtly sloping, so this will be close enough. Okay, we are 99.5% the way there. You can see here, it looks like I did accidentally get rid of my floor at one point. So I'm just going to copy my ceiling down because my ceiling was pretty much my floor. I may have to make some adjustments because it's going to definitely make connections a little bit differently. Why is it I can't select it? There it is. Copy and then set axes to vertical. So I'm just going to align these things. I know it's not exactly perfect because there is some slope change happening here, but this would be close enough. So you can see that my interior surface doesn't exactly meet my exterior surface, so I'm just going to use the simple move face command to pull these together so that I can have a continuous surface so people wouldn't fall into a crack. Okay, so, I skipped a few things. I want to put this over here. I would want to model a door and stuff, but those are fairly simple. I would probably want to do the sort of railing that's going along this, but I would just sort of draft that out as a 2D extrusion and just extrude up. But I think this covers now 95% of what you need for this project. Okay, so I'm going to end this one.